Hello, everyone, and welcome to Retro Oddities. This is episode 2. I am the Fat Wizard, and I'm here today with my good friend ShaneIsGames. Shane, can you believe it? We made it to episode 2 already. Absolutely incredible.
It's been so long. We've worked so hard. I didn't think we'd ever soar so high.
And the nominations for best, what's the it's like the potties or something like that. I don't know. The Razzies. We're getting all the nominations for like best podcast series. So
I can barely even get into my mailbox with all of them stuffed in there now.
That's right. Hey, well, what game are we taking a look at here? If actually, for folks that clicked on the video, they probably already know. So we might as well just tell people.
We are playing Blazing Dragons today, an old console-based point-and-click adventure game. Kind of in the vein of the old LucasArts games.
Yeah, this is, I guess they released this on the PlayStation and Sega Saturn, and the reason I heard about it is I just recently picked up a Sega Saturn, having never owned one, and I was just kind of looking at games. I'm like, oh, cool, here's a game for Sega Saturn. I should buy that game. And it turns out it's kind of cool.
Now, you
I
played...
don't think it... Yeah. What?
So you played the Saturn version, correct?
I did, but I think the PS1 and the Saturn are pretty much the same.
I've heard some people say the audio quality is a little bit better in the Saturn version, but yeah, I mean, content-wise, I've heard there's nothing different.
Yeah. So I don't think it's going to soar. Let's see if we can get some dragon puns in here.
Oh, no.
To the same heights as, like, you know, the old Sierra and LucasArts things. I think as a one-off, it was a pretty cool game. Kind of a interesting change in taking King Arthurian mythology and sort of shifting it on its head a little bit, right?
Right, yeah, sort of adding a little bit more of a cartoon spin on it. It felt very Saturday morning.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, so I guess the gist of this is you're a bunch of dragons, and you're basically the Knights of the Round Table, except for, what's it, the Knights of the Square Table?
Of course.
Right? Of course. I don't know that's... Well, I guess there's like 4 dragons, 4 knights here.
Yeah.
So that, I guess it kind of makes sense as a square table as opposed to a round table.
You could get away with it, I think, yeah.
I will say that some of the jokes in this game, I legitimately did kind of laugh out loud. It's definitely pun heavy. Like, if you like your puns, this game, it's got some good zingers on it that I just kind of, you know, give it all a chuckle there. I'm like, yeah, you guys nailed that one. So
right.
Good on ya.
I think if it has any problem, it's that there's the sheer volume of jokes. They can't possibly all land. And there are some definitely very groan-worthy puns in here, but they got some good ones.
So I'm just looking at some of the knights' names here. I guess we've got Sir Lounge-a-Lot.
Of course.
Which, Sir Lancelot. We have, who else do we have?
Sir Gasflame.
You know, what's that a pun off of?
Oh, jeez. Asking me to recall my Arthurian legend here.
I mean, I thought we came prepared. I told you.
I have researched the wrong material here today.
Yeah. Well, better luck next time. I guess there's a Sir George, which isn't super impressive.
That one's the villain, though, not one of the round table. Though.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Sir George is a very, very large man who has this really cool armor. It's plate mail. And he kind of comes in. Well, actually, let's take a step back here. Flame, right? So Flame is this beautiful, and I use this term very loosely, beautiful dragon,
air quotes,
that apparently she's got like purple hair, but they never really show it because she's always behind a veil, or not a veil, but like a hood or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I guess she gets to get married, as you do in mythological legends, and she has to get married to one of the knights. And so they're going to be doing a challenge, like a trial, a test of knight abilities.
Right.
And I guess the only criteria is you have to be a knight and you have to be a dragon. Or maybe it's like you have to be a dragon to be a knight, and then you just need to be a knight to actually participate.
Something like that, yeah.
Oh, but man, King George or Sir George, he has a wily idea on how to kind of bend the rules a little bit, right?
Cunning plan that no one could possibly see coming. So basically, what his plan is he's going to make a robot dragon.
Robot dragon.
that
qualifies.
So not only will that qualify him, but also being a robotic behemoth will just easily best everybody else.
Hey, now how come okay, so first off, Flicker is the character you control. He's a dragon. Now how come Flicker has to prove his knighthood, but this black dragon can just kind of walk in and be like, "Yo, I'm competing."
Intimidation, I assume.
Intimidation because he's strong. That's why. But I guess I didn't really question it, but now that I'm talking about it, I'm like, wait, these rules really weren't consistent. 1 out of 5. Terrible game, never play.
It didn't occur to me that you play 8 hours through the game and all of that could have been avoided if Flicker just said, "Oh no, I already became a knight. I'm fine." That was taken care of a long time ago.
So Sir George comes in with this black dragon, which maybe is a play on the Black Knight from King Arthur. I don't know. It seems like it could be, right? Kind of
definitely kind of a foil
stretch, but
in both cases, yeah.
But anyway, he comes in with this black dragon, and he's like, "Hey, yeah, I'm gonna win, right?" And everyone seems really kind of taken aback. They're like, "Hey, you can't do that," but I guess you got to stop him.
Yeah.
And you do so in a point-and-click adventure, which is cool. You don't get a lot of point-and-click adventures on consoles back then, and even in today, these days.
That was one of the things that I think was strangest about it, because it feels like a classic LucasArts adventure game, and there was some adventure games that got console releases, but this one never got a PC release.
Yeah, that is weird. I'm curious what the thought was there. Maybe because this game came out in 96, so this would have been like right on the tail end of the adventure heydays, right? Because I'm trying to think of like Full Throttle.
Yeah, I want to say like
95.
Right, I want to say like 98 was sort of the twilight around there.
Yeah, because I think Grim Fandango, I see that as like the exit point of adventure games in the large commercial space.
I agree.
So let me see release date there. Grim Fandango release date was 98, October 30th, 98. So this Grim Fandango, Full Throttle were definitely on the PC. I'm really curious what the strategy for the Saturn and the PlayStation were. I don't know.
Very interesting choice to make, definitely. Multi-console, but no PC for something that feels like it should be controlling with a mouse as well.
Yeah.
I will say I didn't find it too much of a roadblock using the cursor with the D-pad, as it were. So
the complications I had, and I'm curious if these were on the PlayStation as well. They had a couple mini games in here, which, by the way, I love mini games in adventure games because I think it just kind of helps change the pace up a little bit. And some of the mini games are cool, but there was 2 that seemed very timing dependent, and one of them was like a thumb wrestling thing.
Yes.
And the other was a dance off. And so I don't know if you had any issues with either of those, or that just worked out flawlessly for you. But the arm wrestling or thumb wrestling one was really difficult there, just because the timing seemed very tight.
Yeah, thumb wrestling one was definitely one of those ones where the first couple times I attempted it, my first thought was, how is this even possible? It just felt like I was so far away from what they wanted me to be doing.
And it seemed like, because once they pin your thumb, you have to like mash on the button, but it had all the telltale signs of like, this game was made for Windows 95 and you're playing on Windows 10, right? Where it's like, it's just super, super fast. And you're like, what, are they supposed to be going that fast? But no, this was on this original Saturn hardware, is not being emulated.
Right,
so
right.
I think you played on the PlayStation as well, right?
I played on the PS3, which is technically emulating.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I felt a little bit suspicious about all the mini games, because all of them felt because there's those two, and there's also the catapult.
Yeah, where you actually catapult cats, right?
Right. Of course.
Get it? Do you get it? It's a little on the nose on that one, but that was kind of cool.
That one didn't take me as many tries as the other ones, but the same thing. The first couple times I tried it, I'm like, wow, this seems like it's so exacting on the timing. How am I going to get it?
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely not a modern hardware issue. They were just made to be, I could generously say very challenging, but also especially for thumb wrestling, particularly for thumb wrestling, the timing windows seem very strange.
Yeah.
In particular, I consider myself a pretty good button masher, and sometimes it just seemed like there was no way to escape once you got pinned in there.
Yeah, I think the trick was don't get caught, and then always be on top.
Basically, that seems like the only way I got through it in the end.
So let's talk a little bit about the pedigree of the game, because it was published by Crystal Dynamics. That's a pretty big name,
especially at the time. Definitely.
And it still is a pretty big name. I'm looking at the company that made it. It was called Illusions Gaming Company, and not a lot on their resume here. They've got a couple smatterings here. They've got a Scooby-Doo Mystery on the Genesis. They've got Super Caesar's Palace on the Super Nintendo. Then they had Blazing Dragons. But here we go. They go out on a bang with Beavis and Butthead Bunghole in One and Beavis and Butthead Do You. And so that was literally like their final hurrah, was just like Beavis and Butthead innuendo. So, oh man, that's a little sad, but I guess if I had a gaming company that went out, that's pretty much how I would go out as well.
I suppose if you got to be remembered, that's one way to get remembered. Not the best way, but it'll do.
Yeah.
It'll do.
Yeah. But yeah, so more importantly, though, one of the writers was it a writer or just one of the voice actors? Was Terry Jones.
Correct. I don't know if he actually had a writing credit, but he was in there.
Okay, yeah. He was in there. Also, who there was another name. Actually, on the very front of the cover, it says starring the voices of Terry Jones, and who's the other individual here?
That would be none other than Cheech Marin of Cheech and Chong fame.
He headlines the game, but I'm pretty sure he's only in it for like 5 minutes. Unless he's a very good voice actor. I only heard his voice and like one character and very little lines.
Well, this is actually what grabbed me. So his top billing was he was the villain in the game, Sir George.
Oh, he was? Okay.
He did play one other role, that might be the one you're remembering of, which was Guido the pizza chef.
That's the one. I was like, okay, that's Cheech. So maybe Sir George, he was just a better voice actor than I was expecting.
Yeah, he did have some range. And basically just the fact that they hired Cheech Marin to do a over-the-top Italian accent is very strange to me.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple things in the game that probably don't play with today's society there. It's maybe a little insensitive to a couple of cultures and ideals there, but again, it seems like a very in the 90s sort of game where things that we might laugh about now back then are now much more serious topics to discuss, right?
Right.
So
right.
it is. I will say it's very much a product of the time. Don't go in here thinking you're going to get universally accepted comedy. It's edgy. It's kind of like Monty Python, where you kind of look at it now and you're like, okay, some of this is funny and some of it I'm not sure if I should laugh at,
Some humor ages very well, but not all of it. Definitely.
Yeah. So now that we're on the topic of Cheech, you had a really interesting image that you shared with me. Do you want to walk us through what's going on here?
Yes, so my introduction to Blazing Dragons actually came from my youth. When I used to collect the old video game magazines back in the day. I remember IG, was it IGN? I remember IGN was one of them.
Well, they had PC. Oh, EGM.
EGM, that was the one I was thinking of. Sorry.
Electronic Gaming Monthly. Oh, by the way, those magazines were impressive. I remember it's a 400-page EGM, and those were beautiful. They don't make them like that anymore. But yeah, just getting a fat stack. Granted, it was probably like 300 pages of ads, but it doesn't matter.
There was a lot.
That's what we're going to talk about right here.
And what happened was, in one of those magazines, there was a full-page ad for Blazing Dragons. And the reason I remember it so strongly is because it had some tiny screenshots of the game on one side, but the ad was dominated by a live-action picture of Cheech Marin wearing medieval armor and breathing fire.
And I'm pretty sure he's actually breathing fire here.
It sure looks like it anyway. And the entire thing was packed with, this is an advertisement for Blazing Dragons. And yet the advertisement has half a dozen references to Cheech and Chong. It just says at the top in big letters, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Isn't that, was that the name of one of their movies?
I think so. I believe so. Movie, possibly an album.
Of that, yeah.
And apparently they had a contest, too, where you could get signed pictures signed by Cheech Marin.
Yeah, so it looks like, so it says, give us your top 5 reasons why Cheech is blazing again. Get it? This is Blazing Dragons. And
a little bit of a double
entendre.
And
you could win one of, so I guess you could win 15 photos autographed by Cheech himself. Now, they don't say what type of photo it is. I'm going to assume it's a Cheech photo, but maybe it's a photo of this ad. Who knows?
That would be a bit of a strange prize.
Which, by the way, if you are a listener here and you have access to one way or the other one of these photos, we would love to see it. You should tweet us it or email a picture of it. But I guess you could also win 25 copies of Blazing Dragons as well. So I'm guessing maybe. It's unclear if you would win one copy of Blazing Dragons and then a photo, or you would just win one or the other. But the contest did end September 30th, 1996. So
just missed it.
It's a little late here. But yeah, other things of note here on the ad. It does advertise 50 scenes of mind-melting puzzles, and then a couple arcade action, including catapult and dragon thumb wrestling. Now, in terms of the puzzles here, I'm curious, Shane, if you had any issues with some of the puzzles, getting stuck on some of them. I definitely had to kind of go to the hint guide and then actually look up actual answers at a couple points there. Were you able to figure it out on your own?
Oh, no. There was definitely a couple stumbling blocks in there that I had some trouble with. I think probably most notable, the thing that I was having trouble with, and maybe it was possibly just because it was late in the game and I was getting tired by then, but the trials at the end, the trials of knighthood, I had some challenges with in particular.
Yeah, I think I remember missing, there's a, you have to so one of the trials is you have to face your fears, and your fear is laundry.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just so happens that you had been carrying around laundry detergent for most of the game. And so you throw the laundry detergent on the thing and it doesn't kill it. And so what you have to do is use this sodium amatrite or something. I don't know, some chemical that you pick up,
right?
Which I guess makes the rainy cloud above this thing precipitate. Don't worry about it. Doesn't worry. Don't worry about the actual puzzle. What I'm trying to say here is that I actually didn't know that item existed, and that's one of the most feels bad man thing about adventure games is when the items don't really stand out. So you didn't really know there was an item you could interact with there,
right? And
that was one of those. I didn't realize there was this chemical you were supposed to pick up. Do you remember if that what kind of made it difficult for you, or was it something else?
I believe so. And honestly, I think that's probably better for me, because if I have all the items and I can't figure out what to do with them, sometimes I feel like a bit of a moron, but it's just I didn't actually have the tools needed to solve the puzzle. I feel a bit better about that, even if it is still a frustrating situation not having what you need to solve the puzzle.
Yep.
But yeah, that was me for the trials as well, as I just didn't have items for at least 2 of them, I think.
Okay, yeah. One of the ones I audibly laughed out loud. I thought it was a lame puzzle, but I thought it was super cute. Was you're in prison? You're actually trying to get Flame, who we talked about as the princess, out of prison, and so you don't have a way to open up the door, or you don't have keys to open up her prison cell. So I was like, all right, well, how the heck do I open up this prison cell? And there's a little dog, and you can use this bone on this dog, and you can throw it, and then he'll go pick it up. And I was like, so what's going on with this whole dog thing and throwing the bone? Did you get keyed in on what you were supposed to do here, Shane, or did you have to look that one up?
I had to look that one up, definitely.
So that one's like super lateral thinking, but I enjoyed it. So what you actually have to do, I guess there's a couple locations in the game where you can throw the bone and the dog will get it. And so you're supposed to associate, like, wherever the bone goes, the dog will go. And so what you do is you actually throw the bone in the locked cell with the, Flame that you're trying to get. And so the dog runs upstairs, grabs the keys for the cell, and then like opens the cell. And I'm like, that's super creative and super cool. But at the same time, there's no reason that should work, or like even logically, I don't know how you're supposed to piece that together.
In a million years, I never would have gotten it, but just like you, it made me laugh regardless, so I give him points for that, at least.
Yeah, I like that there. And this game actually has it's a very weird, interesting way that you approach a lot of the game, in that it's sort of open world, like in that there's a lot of different areas you can go to, and unlike Full Throttle. So I actually think Full Throttle is one of the, even though it's easy, is a very great model for adventure games, because they have here's a section here and there's multiple puzzles, and you can kind of solve some of these independently, but then they all funnel into a final thing and then you move on to the next scene.
Mm-hmm.
Blazing Dragons, though, you can pick up items or encounter a scene and either miss an item in that scene, or pick up an item in that scene and then not use that item for like the next 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And so and eventually you'll need it, but you might not remember, if you don't have the item, you'd be like, well, where the heck do I get this item? But it has this side effect of kind of cluttering your inventory, where you're just collecting like 20 items in your inventory. And so you're like, which one of these are useful? And I was starting to wonder if they were going to do the Monkey Island 2 sort of thing, where you just collect a bunch of junk in your inventory.
For people that haven't seen it, I need to paint this picture, because your inventory is actually a full screen. It's not just a little bar at the bottom. Like when you pull it up, it takes up the entire screen. I think you get a scroll bar in a couple parts as well. It does lead to the problem where if you get to a puzzle and you're like, oh, I don't think I have the problem to solve this, the next follow-up is, well, better search the entire world then.
Yeah. Or look up the hint book. I actually, in the copy I have, it does kind of have a cool little hint book, which kind of subtly gives you hints. Again, hints are only useful if you know about the items. So if there's a hint that's like, oh, you should, what do dogs like? It's like, well, I know a dog likes a bone, but like, what do I do with that information? Or like, I didn't even find the bone, so how am I supposed to know what a dog likes? But
right.
A couple times it was handy. And the other thing I did like was that near the beginning of the game you have your little research book, or I guess Flicker. Flicker being the character you control, he's an inventor.
Right.
And so he's got this little book that has some inventions, and throughout the game you'll use those inventions to solve puzzles. So that was kind of cool to be like, I looked through this book and I see there's 3 inventions, and I can guarantee at some point through the game I'm going to have some scenario where I'm going to have to use these. So I thought that was a little cool touch. You always kind of remember like, oh yeah, I have that book in there in case I I kind of have a puzzle that I'm not quite sure how to solve. Maybe there's some hints in there about how to do that.
I really thought that was particularly neat because none of the inventions he uses as they're described in the book. They all have a completely different use. So they foreshadow puzzles that you're going to need to solve later without like outright spoiling them. I really liked that. I appreciate games that do that.
Yeah, I think that was really cool, and I think at some point they actually use your book also to construct version 2 of the Black Dragon, and so in some ways the book that you have has turned against you, right? As people have stolen your ideas, and so again that manifests in the story as well. So that book has many uses there.
So it's not just something that is useful for the player, but it actually is integrated into the story. Also very cool.
Yeah. So I guess I would say I enjoyed my time with it. Like you, I got to a point where the writing, I think, kind of ran its course and I was kind of done. And so I just kind of like, all right, let's just finish this out. I think it might have taken me like between 6 and 8 hours to complete, and I enjoyed my time, but I don't necessarily think I need to see another sequel or another Blazing Dragons.
Which is interesting because it's actually kind of tied to a Canadian Saturday morning cartoon, right?
Have you ever watched it?
I've looked
seen
up
anything
some
about it?
clips on YouTube, and I was very confused because the character designs of the Canadian kids show version are completely 100% different, as is the voice cast.
Okay.
There seems to be something weird that happened during the development of this game. Because when the game was originally announced, apparently it was announced as Dragons of the Square Table was the original name it was announced under. And then later it was re-announced as a Blazing Dragons game, but for some reason they don't share any character designs. They have the same character names.
Really?
And the same basic character archetypes, but none of them look the same.
I feel like I need to at least watch an episode. I'm sure YouTube's got something there.
I feel like part of it might have just been a logistics thing because it wasn't like they made the cartoon and then made the game based on it, but they were both in production at the same time. So they might not have nailed down all the details while they were working on it.
And I'm just looking at the box here, the cover art, which I don't know. There is a character that's a jester, and the cover art is of a dinosaur in a jester getup, but he's not really one of the main characters. But I will say he is holding a fork, and it's got a marshmallow that is roasted, and then you see some little smoke trails. So, again, this is all happening under the title Blazing Dragons, so I think they knew what they were doing here.
I suspect so. Yeah, most definitely.
Especially with we got Blazing Dragons holding up a stogie and Cheech Marin. So I think we know what's going on here.
Now, it's weird because I think there is a good reason they put the jester on the cover, and it's a reason you wouldn't really know unless you played the game, which is...
Okay, yeah.
Because the jester is voiced by Terry Jones of Monty Python, which I think was one of their big selling points.
Okay.
But you're right. He only has like 3 scenes in the entire game, and they're all very minor scenes that don't have much to do with the storyline. Now,
I will say the person that voice acted King Allfire, it was, I guess we determined it was Jim Cummings.
Correct.
He sounds so familiar. Like when you hear him talk, and I really encourage folks to look up Blazing Dragons and just watch like the first cutscene or whatever, because this guy, it's like I feel like he was like all the villains of every Saturday morning cartoon show. So I need to go research like where have I heard Jim Cummings. And Shane, you mentioned it was Winnie the Pooh. He did Winnie the Pooh, and
that's probably what he's best known as. And
it's definitely not what I know him from, but...
I think it's hilarious because if you look at his credits on IMDb, it's like half of them are Winnie the Pooh and the other half are like villains, which is the most hilarious contrast. I love that. Like, I don't know who listens to this guy doing Winnie the Pooh and they're like, yes, the evil emperor. That's what we're hiring him as.
Well, I mean, Mark Hamill does a great Joker.
You're
So.
right there. You got me.
Well, I think it's time for the what would it take to make a sequel segment. And Shane, this is where I pose to you. You are the lead designer of the next Blazing Dragons. What do you do to make sure that this game is a hit?
Well, I think the good thing is we already have our tagline all set.
Okay, what's the tagline?
All right, just imagine this on like a billboard, like in big letters along the top. Cheech is blazing again. Again. The sound you hear is the money from investors just rolling in trucks.
Okay, so okay, now let me ask you a question here. Is the game better or worse if it's Cheech Marin dressed up like a dinosaur, but like Mario movie style, where it's just like, yeah, we kind of have some felt or something that looks like a dinosaur, but it's not really
like the Super Mario
really
Super Show.
Yeah.
I would definitely be more interested in this game if it was an incredibly low effort live action adaptation.
Now again, so you're staking on Cheech Marin is like the tent pole here, right?
You gotta have a draw, and that seems like a good one to me.
So he's the main character, and you're controlling Cheech. Is that what we're saying?
Exactly, and you can even have characters just accidentally refer to him as Cheech every once in a while. It doesn't matter. It's fine.
Now the big question is Flicker and Flame still together in Blazing Dragons 2?
Oh, that sounds like a good plot hook to me right there. You know, trouble in paradise, as it were. Some sort of
well, if you the listener want to make Blazing Dragons 2 a reality, Shane, how can people do this? If they wanna really say, like, I want to put some skin in the game here. I want to invest, if you will, into Blazing Dragons 2. Shane, do you have any outlet for that?
Well, I know how not to invest in things, because that is a thing that I'm very good, well versed at. I think you're referring to the channel redemption I have.
Yeah, the channel redemption you have, you can go there, and I think this month only, you can contribute channel points to the Blazing Dragons 2 sequel.
Definitely.
So,
at the end of the month, we will total up the aggregate value of all those channel points, which hopefully will be above $0, though somehow I don't think it will be. And then we'll see what we can do with that. I think probably $10 million, and we can get this thing off the ground. Easy, no problem.
So I think we ought to make the Blazing Dragons Bitcoin, and we fund it from there.
I think that would work. I don't see any problems with this plan whatsoever.
All right. Well, I'm gonna tweet Cheech Marin, just kind of check on his availability for let's go for next week. And we'll get this going in here. And then I'm gonna need some costume work from you. So I hope you have a pair of shears handy, because we need a dragon costume.
I have no idea how to sew, and I don't think that'll be a problem.
You just hire an actor in a green suit to like hold the felt thing in front of Cheech as he walks around.
You just sort of drape the green fabric over him and then just duct tape it tight around his limbs. It's mostly form-fitting at that point, more or less.
Got to make sure he can that stuff is not flammable.
You just keep chanting your mantra. We'll fix it in post. We'll fix it in post.
Well, that's been Blazing Dragons. I want to thank you, Shane, so much for joining me on episode 2 here. Shane, why don't you give me a little plug on what you've got going on over the next couple weeks here, and where can I go and watch you?
Well, I stream every week on the ShaneIsGames Twitch channel, twitch.tv/ShaneIsGames. Right now on the channel, I am working my way through the second of the original Phoenix Wright trilogy, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Justice for All. And after that, I will be playing a indie side-scrolling adventure game called Flipping Death, which we played the first game in that series, and that was had a good sense of humor. I'm looking forward to that.
Flipping Death. I haven't heard of that one.
It's a pretty recent one. It's from the last couple of years.
So is flipping a verb here, or is it a, I guess, adjective? Or what would that be?
Kind of like a modifier?
Yeah, if you're like, hey, you flipping death, that sort of thing. Or is it like, hey, I'm flipping death?
I think it might be a double entendre. I'm not 100% sure.
I think I think Blazing Dragons owns the rights to those. So
they're going to have to pay royalties.
All right. Well, we're going to be looking out for you on Shane is Games at twitch.tv, something like that. Twitch.tv/ShaneIsGames. And then you've got a Twitter too, right?
I do also. Shane is Games on Twitter.
Yeah. So go follow him there. And of course, if you're interested in hanging out with the Saturday Morning Gaming Show crew, you can always go to SaturdayMorningGamingShow.com to learn more. We got all of our episodes of both the Saturday Morning Gaming Show and Retro Oddities here. And of course, we do have a Patreon. If you would like to jump in and help support the show and future content, you can head over to patreon.com// Saturday Morning Gaming Show. You can learn all about some of the cool stuff we got out there. But I think that's enough shilling that I've got in for me. And then we're gonna go back. We're gonna play some more games, Shane, and we're gonna try to talk about some more crazy stuff in the future. So we better get going. What do you say?
Sounds like a plan to me.
All right. Thank you everyone for listening to us on the podcast or watching us on YouTube, and we'll catch you on the next episode.